Hello, and welcome to Real Cheating Story. I gaze down at my husband Bill, who blinks desperately, trying to adjust his eyes to the bright light of early dawn. Tears stream down my face as the painful truth settles in. There's no saving our marriage. It's all over now, just 3 months shy of what would have been our 30th wedding anniversary, a milestone I had always cherished since that hot July afternoon in 1984. I sniffle and wipe my tear-streaked face with the back of my hand, feeling the weight of the mess I've created. Caught cheating with a French cuisine teacher, who Bill had ended up attacking in a fit of rage last night, I now realize the full gravity of the situation. Afterward, I found Bill unconscious, having overdosed on aspirin and alcohol. I managed to save his life, tying him to the bedposts while he remained unconscious. Now that he's awake and fully aware of my betrayal, a strange thought crosses my mind. Even with the undeniable reality that I've damaged our relationship beyond repair, I wonder, if this is truly the end for us, could we still share one final intimate moment, a bittersweet farewell? Meanwhile, in another part of our story, Bill was reveling in a personal triumph. High fives were exchanged all around the office as the deal was signed. "Well done, young man," Keith said, slapping Bill on the back. "Let's shut up shop and go celebrate." "You're the boss," Bill replied, smiling so hard he felt it might stick for weeks. It was, without a doubt, the best day of his professional life. The only event that rivaled this feeling of joy was his wedding night almost 30 years ago. He wished he could share this moment with me, his wife. But while Bill had been at work, closing the biggest contract of his career at Birmingham's National Exhibition Center, I had been attending a cooking course down on the French Riviera. That night, Bill and his team celebrated in style, and the following morning he paid the price with a pounding headache. As he stumbled down to breakfast at 7 a.m., he punched out a couple of aspirins and swallowed them with a gulp of cold orange juice. It was only in the clarity of the new day, with the hangover starting to fade, that the success of the previous night truly began to sink in. In 2 months, his bonus would be the largest of his career, and Bill was now leading the race for Salesman of the Year, a title he had dreamt of during his 16 years selling machinery for Sparco Engineering. He had always been the hardest working and most reliable member of the team, with consistent results to show for it. While average or underperforming salesmen quickly faded from the company, Bill had survived the highs and lows of his career, always being the first to arrive at the office in the morning and the last to leave in the evening. Bill had always been the most diligent salesman, and at long last, it seemed that his hard work was starting to bear fruit. His client, the Caledonian Consortium, had been hinting at possible expansion plans for months, and Bill had spent countless hours exchanging speculative specifications and quotations, trying to meet their ever-changing requirements. He'd worked late into many nights, negotiating prices and schedules between his company and Caledonian. The process had felt endless, and when they chose the first day of the national exhibition to announce to the press their plans to fully refurbish their expanded Glasgow factory with Sparco's latest production machinery, Bill was still taken by surprise. No one was shocked, though, that Bill was the first of the 6-person exhibition team to make it down for breakfast that Tuesday morning. His strong work ethic, instilled by his Scottish engineering father, set him apart from the rest of the sales team, and despite his success, everyone knew that Bill was ready and willing to continue working hard for the team throughout the rest of the week. As Bill sat at breakfast, he found time to reflect on his upcoming birthday. He would be 55 on Wednesday. Blimey, he thought to himself, that's tomorrow. The realization hit him that he could no longer claim to be in his early 50s. Mid-50s sounded much older than he felt. Even worse, he wouldn't be celebrating his birthday with his wife, Allison, like he had for the last 4 years. He sniffed, a little disappointed that Allison hadn't even packed a birthday card for him, something she'd made a point of doing all those other years when he was away for work. Bill realized that they hadn't been connecting lately. He had been so consumed with this demanding Scottish account, while Allison had been busy with her own pursuits, cookery, fitness, hot yoga, and a number of other activities he couldn't quite remember. By the time Bill was halfway through his full English breakfast, his next colleague arrived, sales director Keith Bowman, Bill's immediate boss. They greeted each other warmly. Bill liked and respected Keith, who had been his boss since day one and had always treated him fairly. Keith had stood by Bill during the years when his sales results were less than impressive, especially compared to the younger salesmen who preferred fast wins rather than building solid, long-term accounts. "How are you this morning, young man?" Keith asked cheerfully as he sat down beside Bill. Bill smiled good-naturedly, as he did every time Keith called him young man. Keith was only older by 9 days, but he never missed an opportunity to use the phrase. "Very good, Keith, considering the state I was in when I got back to my room," Bill replied with a laugh, pushing some beans onto his toast with his knife. "Remind me never to do those shots again. I'm strictly a beer and scotch man, and I know when to stop. That tequila, though, it's well out of my comfort zone." "You did well, Bill. That was a very nice order you secured when you first opened that account. What was it, 10 or 12 years ago? No one thought it would turn into what it has. All those small orders and countless trips back and forth to Glasgow for briefs and quotes. It's really paid off." "It's been a team effort all around," Bill said modestly. "Couldn't have done it without the support of the team and the competitive pricing agreed upon by the board." "Well, young man, good job," Keith grinned. "But the other directors and I don't buy into all that spreading the glory stuff you're spouting. I know you've been pushing through your birthdays year after year at these events, and even though you've tried to hide it, I've noticed you've been a bit down since Sunday. It's not the same without Allison here, is it? Has it been that obvious?" Bill asked pensively, using the last piece of sausage to soak up the remains of his fried egg. "No, not at all, Bill," Keith said. "You're my most professional salesman. You always give at least 100%, and I never have to worry about you." "Thanks, Keith. I really appreciate you saying that," Bill replied. "The rest of the board appreciates that fine order, too," Keith continued, taking a deep breath. "So last night, as a group, we decided to give you the rest of the week off." "What?" Bill stammered. Keith held up his hand. "We've got a plane ticket waiting for you at the international airport. You're flying out late this morning to Nice, and we've booked a penthouse suite at Allison's hotel for the rest of the week, right through to next Wednesday." "Really?" Bill almost choked on his toast and marmalade, washing it down with hot tea as tears welled up in his eyes. "You heard me, young man," Keith said, grinning. "And none of this break is coming out of your holiday time. You've earned it. So, finish your breakfast, pack up, and head out of here. I don't want to see you back in the office until Monday week, all right? And give Allison my regards," Keith laughed, giving Bill a hearty slap on the back. Bill Jones had been happily married for 29 years. His wife, Allison, 51, was 3 years younger than him and had always kept herself active and fit. A stay-at-home mother, she made time to visit the gym twice a week and, more recently, began attending hot yoga classes. Since their youngest child left home 5 years ago, Allison had been filling her time with various courses. The results of her cookery classes had added flair to their dinners, much to Bill's expanding waistline, and her pottery and tapestries adorned the walls of their home. For the past 4 years, Allison had accompanied Bill to the exhibition center during the spring break, no longer needing to stay at home. But this year, she informed Bill of a unique opportunity. A select group from her French cookery course had been invited to work in the kitchens of a top seafront hotel in Nice for a week. Naturally, Bill encouraged her to go and enjoy the experience, though he knew he would miss her. While some of the married men attending the exhibition looked forward to late-night outings, Bill, a devoted husband, always stayed true to his vows. He wasn't interested in any distractions, focusing instead on his work. Allison had explained that the French course would be intense, with long hours spent working lunch and dinner services, including preparation and cleanup between meals. It was a real immersion into the fast-paced life of a top-class French kitchen, and only the highest-performing students were allowed to attend. Allison was proud to be the only one from her local college selected. The rest of the group came from across the country. Because of this demanding schedule, Bill and Allison knew that their contact during the week would be limited to short text messages. Bill was busy with the exhibition, waking early and going to bed early, while Allison was on a late-night schedule. Still, they accepted the challenge, knowing it was just for a week, and Bill had often spent time away for work in the past. As the exhibition got off to a great start, with Bill landing a major contract on Monday, his spirits were high. Recognizing Bill's frustration, Keith had persuaded the board to send him off to France at the company's expense, which felt like a dream come true for Bill. The arrangement included return tickets for both him and Allison the following Wednesday afternoon. Upon checking out of his Birmingham hotel, Bill found a note from Keith allowing him a generous budget on his company credit card to use for holiday clothing, excursions, and dining out with his wife during their break. Bill knew there was no point in texting Allison about his change of plans, as she would be busy with lunch preparations by the time he arrived in Nice on Tuesday afternoon. By then, she'd already be preparing for the evening session. He decided it would be more exciting to surprise her in person that evening, before she even had a chance to read his message. Bill had been so wrapped up in work the past few months that he realized he hadn't spent much meaningful time with Allison. With their 30th wedding anniversary just 3 months away, he resolved to make up for lost time. He even began thinking about different ideas for a second honeymoon once her cookery course ended, along with possible gifts and maybe a family party to celebrate their milestone in style. Arriving at Nice Airport, Bill was met by a hotel limousine, and upon arrival at the hotel reception, he was treated as a special guest and warmly welcomed. He was shown to a luxurious 2-bedroom suite with a stunning beach and sea view, and Bill was highly impressed. After showering and changing into a business suit, since he hadn't yet shopped for casual clothes, he decided to make arrangements for dinner. Bill thought about booking a late supper at a nearby restaurant, or, if that wasn't possible, ordering from the hotel's restaurant and keeping it warm in the suite for when Allison returned from her busy day in the kitchen. Before that, however, Bill decided to have Allison's luggage and belongings transferred from her room to the suite. That's when things took a confusing turn. The hotel had no record of any Mrs. Allison Jones, or any Mrs. Jones, staying there. There wasn't even a group of English trainee chefs booked in. The hotel manager was called, and he assured Bill that their Michelin-starred kitchen had never hosted, nor would they ever host, a group of amateur trainee chefs from England. The manager even questioned whether Bill was at the correct hotel. Embarrassed, Bill could only go by what Allison had told him, that she was staying at this hotel with a small group of trainee chefs, and that she was sharing a room with someone named Michelle. He realized that he didn't know Michelle's last name, nor did he know the name of the course organizer, beyond a vague connection to a cookery course at the local technical college. Bill had no contact details for the college, and every effort he made to find information led to a dead end. It became disturbingly clear that his wife of 29 years, the woman he deeply loved and the mother of their 3 grown children, had lied to him about the nature of her trip. Bill was left wondering whether she had also lied about who she was staying with, or even if she was in this hotel, this resort, or this country at all. He had dropped her off at the airport, but she could have flown anywhere, trusting that he would never think to check her passport stamps. He simply had never had reason to be suspicious of Allison. He trusted her completely. But why would she lie about the destination? She almost invariably brought back fridge magnets from holidays and was bound to take photos of the hotel and surroundings, maybe even of the kitchen staff, even if she had to pretend they were students. Around the time he would normally have left the Birmingham exhibition at the end of the day, allowing for the 1-hour time difference in France, Bill sent a brief text message to Allison, telling her that his company was having a successful show. He asked how the lunch service went and how much she was enjoying her trip to the Riviera, adding that he had spoken to a customer who described the hotel and restaurant where she was staying in glowing terms. He didn't expect a reply until 11 o'clock in the evening, the time on Sunday and Monday nights that Allison had previously sent him a brief text. He was concerned about her whereabouts, but was unable to decide what to do without clear facts of her deception at his fingertips. Was she safe? Was Allison a victim of some audacious scam? He simply didn't know anything. The thought that Allison was involved in some other deception was equally ridiculous. Back in his beautiful suite, his helpless loneliness and doubts weighed on him. His headache made itself felt. He pressed out the last couple of aspirin tablets from the pack he had brought with him and tossed the empty packet on the table. As an afterthought, he rummaged through his carry-on bag and extracted the unopened bottle of Glenfiddich he had bought from the duty-free shop at the airport. Pouring a slug into a shot glass and using it to swallow the tablets, he sat at the table in the lounge and mentally listed on a sheet of hotel-headed note paper the little information he had. He knew she flew out on Saturday afternoon because he had accompanied her to the airport. As far as he knew, Allison wasn't expecting to meet anyone until she got to her destination. The other participants were from all around the country, and she said she was the only local student attending. After leaving her at the airport, though, she could, in theory, have caught any flight to anywhere in the world once she got to Nice. She was supposed to be bunking with a companion, Michelle, in the hotel. She hadn't mentioned any change of plans in her messages, so it was looking increasingly as though he was the only one being deceived. She was supposed to be fully occupied in the kitchens from pre-lunch to after dinner, with a short break in the afternoon, from Sunday through to Thursday. She was due to fly back from wherever she was staying on Friday evening. He would still have been at Birmingham at that time, so he had been led to believe that she planned to take a train followed by a cab ride home from the nearest station. Bill was scheduled to help his team break down the exhibition stand late into Friday night and begin his journey home after breakfast on Saturday morning. If he couldn't find her here, he would have to wait until he got home. Home, he thought. Was that place he shared with Allison really home anymore? What kind of trust could he return to? Would it ever feel like home again? What he did know was that Allison's lies were completely unacceptable. The only reason she would have to lie to him to this extent was because she was hiding something. Something she knew he would find impossible to accept within the boundaries of their marriage. He sat quietly as the tears stung his eyes. He needed to do something positive, anything. Using his laptop, he accessed his current and deposit bank accounts, applied to open new accounts in his name only, and transferred all the money to those new accounts. He left a balance of £1 in each of the joint accounts to keep them open temporarily. Once the dust settled, he thought, the lawyers could divide the assets fairly. He wasn't able to organize a new credit card over the phone, so that would have to wait until he got home. However, he could close their joint credit card account and pay off the balance, effectively canceling Allison's card. He didn't need a credit card in the short term, as he had the company Amex card to use. He knew that if he overused it, he could easily reimburse the company by the time the next statement came in. If he needed cash, he could transfer money online to the old joint account and withdraw it immediately. He could even do that using his iPhone while on the move. Still, despite these efforts, Bill felt helpless. He was anxious to do something, anything, rather than sit there inactive and helpless. Despite having not eaten anything since breakfast, he had no appetite. Nor did he feel like drinking more alcohol, other than the single glass he had already consumed. He wanted to stay sharp, prepared to act when the time came to confront her. He screwed the top back on the whiskey bottle and placed it on the bar in the suite's lounge. Satisfied that he had done all he could to secure his finances, he decided to head down to the reception lounge area to observe whether Allison came in or went out. His plan was to wait and see who she was with before revealing his presence. From early evening, Bill settled into a comfortable spot in the reception lounge, where he had a clear view of both the entrance and the elevators. Hidden behind a large newspaper, he felt his life crumble before his eyes as Allison stepped out of the elevator. She was on the arm of a tall, distinguished-looking man, likely in his late 50s or early 60s, with dark hair that seemed almost too black for his age. They walked through the lounge and into the restaurant, completely oblivious to Bill's presence. Allison didn't notice Bill behind his newspaper, but then again, she probably wouldn't have recognized him even if he had been standing on a chair, waving his arms. She was laughing and talking with the man, their eyes locked on each other. The man was wearing a smart suit, while Allison had her hair up and was dressed in a striking black cocktail dress and high heels, the same outfit she used to wear for special occasions with Bill. Her face was carefully made up, looking glamorous. Bill followed them discreetly and heavily tipped the maitre d' to find out the room number of the man she was with. After tipping the receptionist as well, Bill discovered the room was booked under the name Marcel Brut. Another bribe, in the form of an extra multi-euro note, got him a photocopy of Marcel's passport. Bill then walked around to the restaurant's window, where he could see his wife dining by candlelight at an intimate table for two. Just the kind of setting he had tried to book for her earlier to celebrate his upcoming birthday. He sent her a casual text message, saying he might be able to pick her up at the airport on Friday night. Bill watched as Allison picked up her phone, glanced at it mid-conversation with the man, and then put it back in her bag without reading the message. What struck Bill the most was that she was still wearing her wedding and engagement rings on her left hand, as well as the eternity ring, his grandmother's heirloom, on her right hand. That ring held deep significance, and she usually only wore it on special occasions they shared as a couple. Seeing her wear it while dining with another man felt like an even deeper betrayal. As the couple continued to enjoy their meal, sharing bites and sipping wine, Bill noticed the unmistakable intimacy between them. They touched hands across the table, exchanged smiles, and their body language was clear. They were more than just friends. Bill, convinced now of their relationship, discreetly took several photos with his phone, uncertain of their quality since he was shooting through the restaurant's glass window. Once they had reached the coffee stage of their meal, Bill returned to the reception lounge, hiding once again behind his newspaper. After their leisurely dinner, he saw them leave the restaurant together and head back to the elevator. Returning to his suite, Bill immediately ordered room service, chilled champagne and a pair of crystal flutes, and had it delivered to their room, 542, but charged to his suite, 802. He then went down to the 5th floor and lingered in the hallway. After waiting for about 10 minutes, he saw a waiter wheel a trolley with an ice bucket from the service lift. As the waiter knocked on their door, Bill slowly approached. There was a delay before anyone answered, and the waiter knocked again, louder, announcing in French that he had their room service order. Bill slowed his walk, peering at room numbers as if under a spell. Eventually, a door opened, and after a brief exchange of words, the waiter entered, pushing a trolley in front of him, with a man holding the door open for his entry. Bill charged the door, causing the dressed gentleman to stagger back, protesting angrily at Bill's sudden intrusion. There, sitting upright in bed with a thin sheet pulled up to her chin, was Bill's wife, Allison. Her mouth and both eyes formed perfect circles as she realized she had been caught. Her companion loomed between them with clenched fists. Bill stepped forward without hesitation, stamping down hard on his rival's bare foot, following the movement with a devastating right uppercut, putting every ounce of effort and body weight he could muster into the blow, knocking his taller rival to the floor, where he lay prone, his face a mess. Allison gasped sharply. Bill turned his gaze to his stunned wife, amazed at how calm his voice was, even though every nerve in his body was on high alert. "Looks like your alibi is shattered, Allison, and so is our marriage." Meanwhile, Allison thought to herself that she could make a statement here and now, using the excuses that she didn't know what she was doing, or that her affair wouldn't hurt Bill as long as he remained unaware. She could claim innocence with either of those excuses, but in truth, she would be lying. She did set out to have a brief secret affair, not necessarily to hurt her husband for not meeting her expectations, but desired to keep it hidden. She didn't want him to know, or for this little episode to impact their marriage. In short, she hoped to get away with it. She knew exactly what she wanted. Something simple, just a little bit of fun. That was all she wanted. An opportunity to be desired, to be the center of someone's undivided attention for a while. She wanted something brief but special, something to cherish as happy memories when she grew older and settled into maturity. She certainly didn't want to lose her husband, her home, or her relationship with her children. She didn't want to upset her parents or lose the respect of those she truly cared about. She clearly didn't want to face her family and friends with the shame of being caught in a moment of indiscretion. Oh yes, she knew what she had become, a compulsive liar. She had turned herself into someone unrecognizable, willing to risk everything she loved and had worked so hard for in exchange for a few nights of passion with a man she didn't even like, one she could never love, no matter how much time she spent trying. Her seducer, Marcel, was just as unprincipled as she was. He never mentioned that he was married and gave all his culinary class students the impression of being single. However, she sensed early on that he had someone permanent at home, a woman he was being unfaithful to. Nonetheless, she wasn't looking for a lasting relationship, just a brief fling. So she didn't mind that he might have just as much to lose by his actions as she did. If anything, the competition with an unknown rival only added to the thrill. I also realized during the very first lesson in basic French cuisine held at the local community college that instructor Marcel Bruton was not an experienced culinary professional. It was only a 12-week introductory course, but honestly, he cracked eggs like he had only done it a couple of times for his Sunday breakfast. I didn't even find him particularly handsome or appealing either. He was tall, around 61 or so, 2 or 3 inches taller than Bill, and he was slimmer than Bill, who had let himself go and developed a bit of a belly in recent years. Marcel had a full head of hair, jet black. I later discovered from our hotel bathroom items that Bill has gone gray and rather thin on top. Marcel seemed to be younger than Bill or me. I never asked his age but assumed he was in his late 40s or early 50s at the most. I was genuinely shocked when I eventually saw a copy of his passport. What was particularly captivating about Marcel, though, was his voice, deep and slow, with a wonderful accent. He had me from the very first evening class, just based on his French accent alone. He had all of us attentive, mature ladies from the beginning. We hung on every word and competed like eager puppies for his attention. Drinks immediately after evening classes are a risky idea, often leading to complex situations for existing relationships, but they became the norm for us mature students. All the girls wanted to extend the evening past the 9 o'clock finish, and Marcel was more than willing to join us for an evening cocktail or 3. We were buying. We were competitive, us girls, and eventually, I won his attention. Mind you, I'm sure at least a couple of the other girls had their chance with him before he let me in, but no one was saying. 6 weeks into the course, and Marcel and I were sharing a passionate kiss in the back seat of my car parked at the rear of the pub parking lot. That was the first romantic kiss I had experienced with someone other than Bill for well over 30 years. Marcel was a fantastic kisser, and I felt a rush of excitement. I must admit I loved every moment of it, feeling like a carefree teenager again, even though I was a woman over 50. Our connection deepened quickly after that, and just 2 weeks later, we found ourselves sharing a passionate moment in the back of my car. Bill was usually fast asleep by the time I got home after my cooking class. He always needed a solid 7 hours of rest each night to get up early and beat the traffic during rush hour. If Bill had been awake that first night, would I have had the courage to face him after spending an hour of flirting with someone else? When I was with Marcel, Bill was away on a 3-day trip to Glasgow. He had invited me to join him, but I couldn't miss my cooking class. I wondered if I would have acted the same way that Wednesday night if I knew Bill was home to greet me. The truth is, I had until Friday night to convince myself that having a connection outside my marriage wasn't entirely my fault. I felt I could shift some of my guilt onto Bill for not being there for me. What was it about Bill as a husband that led me to this choice? Nothing particularly wrong. He was steady, reliable, and a great father, but he lacked the excitement I craved. While Bill was solid marriage material, he didn't offer the thrill I sought from a lover. For a while, it was exhilarating. Bill and I were still good together and hadn't given up on each other. We still connected intimately, though not as often as before, partly because I was out many evenings and he needed to go to bed early. When it happened, it was satisfactory but routine. After 30 years, there were no fireworks between us anymore. It would have been difficult to maintain the excitement we had at the beginning. Bill was my only partner during that time, having only been involved with 2 rather inexperienced individuals before him. He naturally charmed his way into my heart and always was the sweetest person I could imagine. One thing I could be certain of was that Bill would never hurt me. He was always gentle and considerate in both our daily lives and intimate moments. Although I didn't always feel fulfilled during our encounters, they were usually tender and loving. However, over the years, our time together had declined to just Saturday night specials. With Marcel, it was different. Our connection was intense and spontaneous, often driven by raw passion. When we were together, we were caught up in each other completely, though I found his approach too hurried at times. Still, there was a thrill in our secret rendezvous, and I was aware of the risks involved, both emotionally and physically, given that he had other interests outside of our relationship. In addition to the excitement of new romance, there was also a sense of danger and uncertainty that came with my involvement with Marcel, especially since I knew he was entangled with others, which made me question my own morals. All these factors contributed to my choices and my desire to explore something outside my long-term, stable but somewhat uninspiring relationship with Bill. As I continued with a short cooking course, my time with Marcel evolved into regular Wednesday evenings, and I didn't mention to Bill that the lessons had ended. I maintained my routine, going out for classes, and I believe Bill remained oblivious to the fact that I stopped bringing home samples for him. He was absorbed in work, preoccupied with clients and the pressures of his job, and it seemed he was struggling with his place among younger colleagues. This preoccupation made him less aware of me and what was happening in our lives. With the time freed from the cooking class, Marcel and I began exploring new venues for our meetings, enjoying each other's company in more relaxed settings. I didn't really expect Bill to notice the changes. By this time, I was intentionally avoiding any intimate requests from him, even our usual Saturday night routine. I didn't think he noticed, and if he did feel that something was lacking, it didn't seem to bother him enough to say anything. I could never visit Marcel's place, which was a good half-hour drive from college, because he had mentioned early in our relationship that he had children at home. I took him at his word. After all, I was the one in a complicated situation, and for all I knew, he was single since he didn't wear a ring or show signs of one. Eventually, I began meeting him at hotels a couple of times a week, fitting around Marcel's schedule while Bill was at work. My time was more flexible, and I found that I was able to adapt in more ways than just time. These extended meetings were exhilarating, and I felt a sense of thrill thinking I was managing this secret quite well. It made me think less of Bill, seeing him as someone easy to mislead. I was unaware that I was getting deeper into something complicated. I became completely absorbed in my connection with Marcel and felt a constant rush of excitement. I realized I struggled to connect with Bill anymore. It felt wrong, almost like I was betraying Marcel if I shared any part of myself with Bill. It was a strange feeling, but it reflected how my emotions had shifted. This continued through the winter and early spring, leading up to the annual exhibition Bill always attended with his company. It was a vital marketing event for their industrial machines. He had been working the exhibition stand for 16 years, and I had joined him for the last 4. I genuinely enjoyed those trips with him, making coffee and engaging with attendees while the demonstrations were set up or waiting for a salesperson to become available. Then, we'd have pleasant evenings out together, which I looked forward to. I thought about how next year, and in the years to come until Bill retires, I would make up for missing out on this trip. One day, Marcel heard about the upcoming exhibition when I mentioned that we would have to skip our Wednesday night and daytime plans that week. He suggested that Bill's week away was a great opportunity for us to take a holiday together in France. Marcel informed me he had organized some activities and accommodation for his kids throughout that week, emphasizing that this was the only time he could get away due to school break. With his charming voice and sly grin, he convinced me that this would be the perfect chance for us. As I began to make excuses to Bill, I felt conflicted about disappointing him again and letting him face Birmingham alone. I noticed the momentary flash of disappointment on his face, which made me feel guilty when I told him about a supposed opportunity at a lovely hotel. I worried that he would see through my lies, but he quickly recovered and cheerfully insisted that the offer was too good to pass up and that I simply had to go. I'm ashamed to admit that I felt a wave of relief when he gave me his enthusiastic approval. I was thrilled about the time I would be spending with Marcel, so much so that I completely forgot about Bill's 55th birthday, which fell on the Wednesday of the week we would be away. Reflecting on Bill's birthday now, I feel terrible about it. I thought this was one thing that was difficult to forgive at the time. His birthday fleetingly registered with me, but I just assumed he would find someone else to celebrate with and enjoy himself while I focused on my own pleasures. I giggled to myself, thinking that's really what I believed. I was being quite selfish. My neighbor and best friend Sandra is about 8 years older than me, and she influenced my views on relationships and standards of behavior. We talked about relationships over morning coffee all the time for the last dozen years or so. Twice divorced, Sandra was enthusiastic about dating a series of younger partners, and some of her views on relationships rubbed off on me. She was still married to her 3rd husband and had been for almost as long as Bill and I had been together. The difference was that she and her husband kept their open marriage alive by having regular relationships outside of their marriage. Sandra said it was more common for men to have multiple partners, but the freedom provided by the contraceptive pill had meant that women could do the same. "No, Sandra," I said to her. "There's no way that Bill would ever be unfaithful. He just isn't that type." She replied, "Oh please, that's just a stereotype. Besides, he may have developed a few changes in the last couple of years, but before that, he was fit and attractive." I laughed. "You'd be interested in any man with a pulse." She couldn't deny it. Sandra knew that Bill had to attend this exhibition every year, plus once a quarter he would visit his clients in Scotland for between 2 and 4 days at a time. She mentioned that he had plenty of opportunities for casual relationships. I replied confidently that I had accompanied him on several of those recent trips, and that during the National Exhibition Week, everyone remarked on how Bill rarely went out in the evenings until I showed up. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a setup to you? Sandra sneered. When I confided in her about our plans, she remarked, "Nice trip. You should be glad you're not going with him." Bill was insistent that I stay home, and I admitted quietly, "Yeah, I figured that would happen." Sandra replied, "It gives him every opportunity to meet someone new on his trip." That thought bubbled around in my head in the days leading up to the trip. I was careful to ensure that Bill didn't see the clothes I packed. To him, it looked like I was only bringing casual clothes and a dress for the last night. Bill dropped me off at the airport, and I gave him a quick kiss on the lips, urging him to head home while I checked my luggage in and waited for my flight. I casually mentioned that parking costs were a good reason for him to leave. I had arranged to meet my friend in the departure area. I had paid for the plane tickets on our credit card while Marcel took care of the hotel room. Bill rarely checked the statements, and all he would see was a charge for flights. I told him that the accommodation was provided by the hotel as part of our arrangement. At the time, I didn't realize how selfish I was being. I was only focused on how clever I felt and how daring and exciting the trip would be. Now I understand the consequences of my actions. I was so wrong. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I could be caught and lose Bill's love and respect. I thought the risk was so small that it barely registered at all. I had no desire to give him any reason to let me go. I loved Bill, and he was my soulmate, someone I wanted in my life for the long term. Nor was Marcel ever my romantic partner. There was no love between us. He wasn't even my casual acquaintance. He was just someone who briefly satisfied a need for me, and once that phase ended, I told myself I would settle down with Bill as I grew older. Every time I felt low or frustrated, I would lean on my memories of that time. On the flight to Nice, Marcel and I were igniting our chemistry just by sitting close and touching each other like young lovers. I felt like a teenager again, as if I were on a school trip, trying to act discreetly. The flight attendant was giving me curious looks, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was just jealous. I felt like I might as well have had a label on my forehead indicating my situation. As soon as we checked into our room at the beautiful hotel, we quickly got comfortable and enjoyed an intimate afternoon together. While Marcel rested to recharge for another round, I texted Bill to let him know I had arrived in Nice. I told him the room was spacious but didn't have a sea view, and that everything was going well. That night, after a romantic dinner and some dancing at a nearby club Marcel knew, we took our time enjoying each other's company. We had a few drinks, and eventually, we fell asleep, exhausted from the evening's activities. I woke up before Marcel on Sunday morning. At some point during the night, he must have gotten up and turned off the lights. I felt like I had slept soundly, without a trace of guilt. It was as if I had separated myself from my normal life for a brief moment, as if this were all a fantasy. I hadn't even thought of Bill until I woke up in this unfamiliar place. Of course, it was Marcel who was peacefully snoring beside me. I grabbed my phone to check the time and found I had received 2 messages from my unsuspecting husband. I had forgotten to text him the previous evening as I had planned. By this time, he would be on the motorway heading toward the exhibition. The first message from Bill was a brief, "Hope you landed okay, love you." The second, sent around 10 p.m., was, "Did you have a good evening, love?" I texted back to Bill that I had just woken up from a deep sleep after my first full evening of work and was on my way to join the kitchen staff for breakfast before starting food prep. I told Bill that the previous night's experience at a nice French restaurant had been wonderful. I signed the text with, "I love you, honey," even though I was typing it in shorthand. As I typed, I genuinely felt love for Bill. I still do love him despite everything that's happened, which seems like contradictory evidence. I took a deep breath and turned off my phone, preventing Bill from calling me directly from the car. Propped up on an elbow, I looked at Marcel for a while in the early Mediterranean morning light. He was lying flat on his back, snoring loudly. Bill always annoyed me when he snored like that, and I used to nudge him to turn over. Perhaps it was a little mean-spirited of me, but at that moment, I found Marcel's sounds comforting, and I could listen without any resentment. How strange was that? Marcel was quite an appealing sight, too. I had never taken the time during our previous encounters to notice his physique. Until that point, Everything between us had been rushed or done in the dark. As I gently woke Marcel up, I realized I had never done anything like this for Bill, not even on our honeymoon. It had never occurred to me to do something like this for my husband, and I suppose he never asked for it either. Yet, I didn't hesitate to engage in this simple act with someone who was almost a stranger. I felt no guilt about the absence of such moments in my marriage with the man I had loved for so long. Nor did I feel bad about choosing to do it for someone who wasn't my husband. I didn't know much about his personal life and didn't want to know more. Even then, I assumed he was likely someone who wasn't looking for a long-term relationship. It didn't even occur to me that I was being unfaithful. I didn't feel like the kind of person anyone could rely on to be loyal in a relationship anymore. I felt no guilt in my actions, nothing at all. I was simply feeling adventurous, ready to embrace that feeling all week long. "Sherry," he murmured in a sleepy, accented voice, sounding undeniably appealing. "I must go." He quickly got up, and I let him head to the bathroom. After our evening meal that Sunday night, we went to the cinema to watch a dubbed American film, but we soon lost interest in the screen and ended up playfully interacting before leaving the theater early. Back at the hotel, Marcel and I shared an intimate moment. I checked my messages on my phone while we rested, and of course, Bill's expected text was there, sent 3 or 4 hours earlier. I wasn't sure about the time difference. Resetting my phone and watch always confuses me. I usually ask Bill to do it for me. I read his message, "All set, tired so early. Hope all went well. Love, B." I typed back, "Tired too. Great meal. Good luck with your work. Love you." Monday morning, we enjoyed another intimate moment in the shower before breakfast. We strolled around nice in the warm afternoon sunshine, conserving our energy for the evening. The next message from Bill was upbeat. "Great sales today. Best ever. Bonus coming. Hope you have great success too. Love, B." Bill was always good at his job. He had sincerity and integrity in spades. His customers in Glasgow trusted him completely, and their chairman's wife once confided in me that they knew he would always do right by them and not just make a sale for the sake of it. The significance of thinking about Bill's integrity didn't hit me at that moment. I returned a message. "Great news, Bill. Things are going well here too. See you Saturday." It was only when we went down to eat, and I bought a newspaper, that I remembered it was going to be Bill's birthday the next day. I hadn't even sent him a birthday card. All those years he went to the exhibition on his birthday, I would slip a card between his clothes and the suitcase for him to find when he unpacked. This was the only time I had taken a holiday with someone else when I needed to deflect any criticism of my role as a devoted spouse. I completely forgot Bill's birthday. It felt too late to send him a message since he believed I would be hard at work in the kitchen preparing lunch. I was actually about to eat, but to keep up the pretense, I delayed and sent him a message in the middle of the afternoon, wishing him a happy birthday for the coming morning. I promised myself I would make it up to him over the weekend. On Tuesday evening, Marcel and I enjoyed a romantic dinner in the hotel restaurant. I received a message from Bill, but I was busy at dinner, enjoying Marcel's undivided attention, holding hands, and completely ignoring the text. Back in our room, we eagerly undressed each other, jumping onto the bed and kissing passionately, both swept up in the moment. Just then, we were interrupted by an unexpected knock at the door, a waiter announcing the arrival of champagne. "Perhaps it's complimentary?" Marcel suggested with a grin as he put on his dressing gown while I pulled the covers up to my chin. I assumed that he had ordered it to set a romantic mood for us, but when I opened the door, it was a shock to see Bill standing there. In a moment of fury, he confronted Marcel as if he were nothing more than a minor obstacle. Bill was both furious with me and visibly upset, and I will never forget the look on his face. He took a deep, shuddering breath and calmly told me that my betrayal meant our marriage was over. "Looks like your alibi is busted, Allison, and so is our marriage," he said. "Now, let's hear the story from Bill's perspective." I had gone back to my grand hotel suite immediately after leaving their room because I had nowhere else to go. But now that I was here, I found I could not relax. I was wound up tight and still shaking. Tension barely described how I felt. I kept clenching and unclenching my fists, feeling numb throughout my body. I certainly could not relax enough to sleep. I was far too wired for that. I had no real appetite for food, either, even though I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast about 14 hours ago. I was in shock to see them together. Allison in bed with her companion, both of them clearly in the moment. I could smell her perfume from across the room. When I saw them fully dressed in the lobby and restaurant, touching each other like a couple, I could only speculate about the state of their relationship. At that moment, I might have been able to stop the charade, to break whatever hold he had over her and try for reconciliation. But now, it felt too late. My family, my mom, dad, kids, and grandkids, was finished. The last thing I want to do now is drown my sorrows in the hotel bar. Nor do I want company. I am too miserable to share this pain. I prefer to be alone. So, I sit at a table in the lounge and pour myself a whiskey. Grasping the bottle with my right hand, I switch to pouring a measure with my left. I swallow the crystal-cut tumbler full of burning spirit in one gulp. I compare my right hand to my left. The right hand has swelled up to almost 1.5 times bigger than the other and is much redder in color too. I've slightly scuffed 2 of the knuckles, with a little blood and fluid seeping out. It really hurts, and I wonder if I have broken a bone or something in my hand. I only hit that cheating Frenchman once, but it felt oddly satisfying. So, I pour myself another scotch to sip and take the edge off. But it isn't just my hand that hurts. In fact, I hardly notice any pain from it. How can you mitigate the pain that comes from a broken heart? I've lost Allison, that much is clear. Or perhaps she has lost me. Maybe her plan all along was to replace me with a new man in her life. What's the difference? The reasons hardly matter now. She feels completely gone to me, and I never want to see her again. Quite honestly, I'm afraid of what I might do if I do see her again. At this moment, I am so angry, and disappearing with her are all those joyful moments we looked forward to sharing together. The marriages of our children, the births of their kids, the development of our grandchildren, the comfortable retirement we planned, visiting all those places we couldn't fit into our busy lives. None of that is going to happen now. There will be no more family Christmases, birthdays, or summer holidays altogether. There is no family anymore. We will probably have to alternate our holiday arrangements to prevent our kids from experiencing the embarrassment and anger of us ever meeting up. This means separation and divorce, of course. Allison has never worked since we had Kelly, so she is entitled to half my pension up to this point, and I will have to support her for at least a couple of years until she gets trained for full-time employment. After that, though, she's on her own. What's the point of me even continuing to work and save for her retirement? At the moment of my finest professional triumph, everything feels undermined. The sweet taste of success has turned into a mouthful of sand. How Allison and I first met comes to mind as I pour myself another drink. It's as if my life is over, and the highlights are flashing before my eyes before I sink into oblivion. Allison and I got together almost by default, really. I had 3 really good friends in my early 20s, and the thought of them now brings a fleeting smile to my lips. We had gone away on holiday together as just a bunch of friends for several years. Then, one year, Gordon fell head over heels in love with Jennifer, who later became his wife. He decided to bring her along as a sweetener for the rest of the group. Jenny brought 3 of her friends, and us lads were sleeping in the loft of a cheap guest house while the girls had 2 slightly grander rooms on the floor below. All we could see from the loft windows, which were set in the roof, was the sky. The other boys and girls paired off, leaving me with a girl named Allison Ford, both of us too shy to take the lead in our little gatherings. She was quite a nice-looking girl, Allison, with short brown hair and soft brown eyes, of average height but a little on the chubby side. Back then, I was just 21 and had recently completed my engineering apprenticeship, while she was 18 and working as a clerk in an office. We only shared a few similar interests like music, dancing, and walking, but on everything else, we were often at odds, particularly when it came to politics. However, we managed to laugh and agree to disagree on many subjects. Allison loved to sunbathe, which was tough on my sensitive skin, so I preferred to sit under the shade of an umbrella with her, reading a book. Our reading choices differed, too. She liked lighter novels while I leaned toward autobiographies. More than anything else, though, I found Allison to be pleasant company during that first week of our acquaintance. Mind you, we never shared a bed during that holiday, which I think made us the only pair who didn't. We took long walks while the others engaged in more private activities. People were more reserved back then, or at least we were. Allison was the youngest in our little group, and I've always been proud that we were the only couple among our friends who stayed together. At the time, we enjoyed our holiday together, and after it, we decided to continue seeing each other as friends. Within a few weeks of our return, our friendship evolved into something more, eventually blossoming into a loving relationship. Within a couple of years, we were engaged and saving up for our future together. After marriage, our children came along. Kelly, who is now 28 and married to craftsman boat builder Malcolm. Martin, our 26-year-old son training in the RAF, and our youngest, Juliet, who moved to China at 18 for a couple of years and is now back in the UK studying Oriental languages at university. I carefully composed text messages for Kelly and Martin, along with an email for Juliet, preparing to inform them that their mother and I were taking some time apart to sort out marital issues, and that it was likely we would go our separate ways. I want to communicate this to them before I get too drunk to express it properly. They are the innocent victims in this situation. As I take a moment to check the credit card transaction details online, I discover that Allison has paid for the plane tickets on our joint card. I deduce that she is also covering their room. Who knew that the credit card company has a 24/7 helpline in the UK? I learned this from a lovely lady with a rich Scottish accent named Marie, who is working the night shift. We have a pleasant chat over the phone, me in the grandeur of my Riviera suite, and her in her utilitarian office. Marie shares that she's working nights because her ex-partner had several affairs, leaving her with challenges regarding child support for their son, Tyrone. She needs the extra income from her unsociable hours to provide for him. Not only does Marie cancel the payments for the tickets, fully reimbursing the account due to fraudulent use, but she also ensures that the airline is notified immediately so that the two ticket holders will have an unexpected surprise at Nice Airport when they attempt to fly home on Friday afternoon. And the next time I was in Edinburgh, if I wanted a date with a fun-loving woman who particularly enjoys being playful, I had her phone number. Given how my marriage was going, I could see myself using it a few months down the line. That was the credit card dealt with. Now I found myself thinking more about this Marcel Bruton fellow. He wasn't getting away lightly with just a gentle tap on the chin. I hoped his face had swelled up as much as my fist had. I examined the photocopy of his biometric passport that I bought from the receptionist. I had his name, date of birth, and it turned out he was almost 5 years older than me, as I had thought. I also noted that his residence was about 30 miles from where I lived. I pulled out my laptop to help with my research. I began searching Facebook for him. How many Marcel Brutons do you think are living in my country? Just the one, apparently. An interesting picture popped up on his homepage. He looked 20 years younger there, clean-shaven with the same dark hair but worn longer. His marital status indicated he was married, just as I had suspected. Another sneaky cheating spouse, it seemed. As I scrolled through his list of friends, I saw he had hundreds, many of them women, including Allison, of course. I rarely look at Facebook, so I wasn't up to date with any of her messages or activities. It all seemed quite innocent on the surface, but I should have been more vigilant. Too late now. I Googled him and discovered that he worked as a French language teacher at a private school about 20 miles from us. So now I knew where to find him. Next, I turned my attention to Bruton's wife. Under Facebook friends for M. Bruton, I noticed several female names ending in Bruton. Most had faces, but one had an image of flowers. There were Annie, Francine, Geraldine, Josephine, Kitty, and Maitline. Annie and Geraldine were clearly his children, both in their teens. Josephine appeared to be in her 80s and likely his mother, living in the south of France, as she seemed to keep in contact with her grandchildren. There was also a man in his 20s, David, posing with his wife and baby, suggesting that Marcel was not only married but also a grandfather. Anyway, this reduced the possibilities for his wife to either Kitty or Maitline. Francine looked attractive in her 30s, not really grandmother material, so I eliminated her. Maitline, an attractive woman in her 50s, was next. Her page indicated she was in a relationship but didn't specify if she was married, so I looked through her photos. She had countless pictures, as her hobby seemed to be photography, but she was rarely in them, aside from a few selfies. Most photos featured a couple with young children, none including Marcel or David, making Mateline an unlikely candidate. Kitty was more mysterious. Her profile picture was of a posy of violets. Her pages lacked information, but noted she was a native of Marcel's current town. There were only a few photos on her timeline, none with Marcel, but one included David and his young family. I deduced, therefore, that Marcel's wife was likely Kitty Bruton. I poured another scotch to help me think and also took a bottle of water from the bar, as I was parched and worried about hangovers in the morning. Strangely enough, even on an empty stomach, the alcohol seemed to have no effect on me. It must have been the adrenaline. Now, where could I go from here? Was Kitty short for Catherine or Catherine? I searched the internet for both variations, leading to far too many results to sort through, especially since I didn't even know what she looked like or anything about her, except that she liked violets. Assuming David was Marcel's son, I searched through David's pictures. There was one of Marcel holding a newborn baby in the hospital, but many different women were also holding that same baby. Among them was one striking woman, tall and slim with a full head of curly auburn hair and a proud smile on her face. It could be her, of course, but surely even someone like Marcel would think twice about cheating on that beautiful woman. The real Mrs. Bruton must surely be one of the stout women shown posing with David's baby. I asked myself what Kitty's maiden name was. Assuming David is in his mid to late 20s, he would have been born in the late 80s. I searched the UK's online birth records for him and found David Arnold Bruton, born in the September quarter of 1986. There, listed in his index entry, was the maiden surname of his mother, Schilling. Excitedly, I looked up marriages in the 80s between Marcel Bruton and a Miss Schilling, and there it was, a marriage in March 1980 in our county town, close to where they live now. I clicked on the corresponding index and discovered that his bride was Catherine Marianne Eve Schilling. Searching the births led me to her entry from 1959, again registered in our county. So now I knew she was my age, maybe 4 or 5 years younger than Bruton. She could still be stout, though. This called for another drink. A search of the divorce registers came up blank. However, they might have separated or divorced too recently for it to appear in the records. Back in the births index, I found the birthdays of Annie and Geraldine just to complete my notes. Now I searched for Miss Schilling on Google. Half a bottle of scotch later, I had compiled a full dossier on one of the foremost family lawyers in the country. The mystery of why she kept her maiden name professionally emerged. Her father is Lord Justice Schilling, a well-known judge. When he was a QC, he was head of the chambers that Kitty later joined from law school and still works at. There were plenty of news items, pictures, and video clips of the striking woman I saw holding her son David's baby on Facebook. The irony didn't escape me either. The divorce lawyer has an open marriage, or Bruton is a complete fool. I inclined to think the latter. I shook my head, realizing it must be that Bruton loves Allison. Maybe Kitty is the one being unfaithful, and Marcel has given up on his wife, just as I have. I determined to check out the snapshots from the restaurant earlier on my mobile. I was delighted to find they were surprisingly sharp, considering the quality of the light. I bundled them together in an email, including minimal text to explain, along with the hotel address and their room number showing that they were booked in the names of M and Madame Bruton. It took 4 different name combinations to send the email to Lord Justice Schilling, but only the second try was successful for the lovely Miss Schilling. A celebratory drink seemed in order, and I relaxed finally, though I felt tired all of a sudden. Once I finished the bottle of Glenfiddich, I started to feel a little drunk, giddy, and enormously depressed all at once. Too tired to shower or even get undressed, I went to the bedroom, lay down and rested. The room spun around. I wanted to sleep, if only I could stop these dreams, these nightmares. Deep, dreamless sleep was all I wanted now. Now, let's shift to the story from Allison's perspective. I went to the hospital in the ambulance with Marcel. He was concussed and had severely bitten through his tongue, as well as lost 4 teeth, 2 up and 2 down, I suspected. The doctors didn't enlighten me much. I gathered from what little I could make out from their conversation that Marcel needed surgery to have the tip of his tongue sewn back on. The wine waiter who brought the champagne to the room had the presence of mind to put the tip of his tongue into the ice bucket, which was handed to the ambulance crew. At least Marcel didn't swallow it, but I think the doctor said he had swallowed a couple of his teeth. I could not be sure if I understood correctly. I had studied French in school, but nothing since then. Perhaps I should take a course in French, but the thought of it makes me feel worse. The paramedics have big grins on their faces as the hotel doctor explains the situation to me in a rather clinical manner. They look at me without pity, fully aware that I have been caught by my husband with another man. I don't know where to look. This is not who I am. I tell myself I want to be seen as a loyal wife because I never wanted Bill to find out, but here I am, away from him in this situation. Deep down, I know I am exactly what they think I am. Surprisingly, no police are involved in questioning me about the incident, perhaps because the hotel wants to keep it quiet. The doctor stays only a minute to hand over his patient to the hospital staff and then leaves. I linger for about 90 minutes until a hospital doctor tells me there's no point in waiting any longer, as Marcel won't wake up until the morning. I decide to return to the hotel in a cab. To my dismay, Bill has been quick to realign our finances, closing our joint credit card account. Neither my credit card nor my debit card works, so I have to pay the cab driver with most of my euro notes. When I return to our hotel room, it's a mess. Blood splattered over the sheets, our clothes thrown everywhere, and the champagne is gone. I notice it's just after midnight now, so I quickly pack my belongings and head down to the reception desk to find out where my husband is staying. "Just a moment, madam," smirks the night desk clerk as I inquire about William Jones' room number. I hand over my passport, which he compares to my flushed face before consulting his computer screen. "Certainly, madam. Here is your card key. I'll have someone attend to your baggage." 5 minutes later, I find myself in the living room of Bill's beautiful penthouse suite. The layout is impressive. There's a bar and kitchen area, a balcony, and 2 bedrooms. How can we afford this? Is Bill spending our money to minimize what he'll have to divide in a potential divorce? I hope it doesn't come to that. What does Bill know about my affair? He isn't at the exhibition in Birmingham as he should have been since Sunday, so he may have been here almost as long as I have. Has he been spying on me? Does he believe I was casually meeting a stranger in the hotel bar, or does he know everything? Did I make him suspicious about this trip? It was a foolish decision to think I could keep this hidden. I need to find out how much he knows and do whatever damage control I can. Then I can be contrite and offer to do anything to keep us together. Perhaps I can suggest marriage counseling. I tip the attendant with my last few euros and show him out the door. All the lights are on in the living room, just as they were when we entered. I wonder where Bill is. On the dining table lies an empty bottle of Glenfiddich whiskey, one of his favorites, next to an empty pill strip. Worried, I rush into the main bedroom, finding Bill lying fully dressed, half on the bed and half off, completely unconscious. I desperately shake him by the shoulders, even slapping his face, but he doesn't respond. He's breathing, but what pills has he taken along with that whiskey? I run back out to the lounge to check the pill strip. Aspirin. I count 16 empty cells. Is that a lethal dose? I honestly don't know if 16 aspirin tablets mixed with alcohol could be harmful. At least they aren't sleeping pills. I notice a salt cellar on the bar in the living room and empty the contents into a glass of water, stirring to create a saline solution. Back in the bedroom, I pour as much saline into Bill's mouth as possible and hold his nose to encourage him to swallow the mixture. He coughs violently, and I wince as some of it lands on his clothes, the bedspread, and even on me. Amid the chaos, I suddenly notice Bill's injured hand, and a sob escapes my lips. My emotions are heightened, and in that moment, I come to a troubling realization. I hadn't considered Marcel's feelings at the hospital. His injuries barely registered with me. Instead, I had only felt my own pain and shame at being discovered. The fog of isolation and fear about a future without Bill clouds my mind, overshadowing any concern I had for Marcel. My thoughts are consumed by the distress of losing my husband, not by the damage done to Marcel. But seeing Bill's mangled hand brings tears to my eyes, and the realization that he might have harmed himself fills me with dread. I can't bear the thought that if Bill suffers lasting effects from this, it's all my fault. I only care about Bill's well-being now. He cannot suffer or risk permanent damage because of my actions. Without him, I feel like a shadow of the person I used to be. He is the solid anchor in our children's lives, and my own insecurities have sidelined me in our family. Bill needs me to help him, even if it's the last good thing I ever do for him. Emergency. I can't wake my husband. I scream into the phone. He swallowed pills and drank a whole bottle of whiskey. He might have fallen and broken his hand. I don't know how many aspirin he took. The line goes quiet for what feels like an eternity, and then relief washes over me when I hear the hotel doctor is on the way. Hold on, Bill. Please don't leave me now. Meanwhile, Bill starts to regain consciousness. He wakes up with a pounding headache, trying to make sense of his surroundings. It's pitch black, and he feels the coolness of the mattress against his skin. Confusion sets in as he realizes he is naked and restrained at the wrists. He notices his right hand feels strange, heavily bandaged, and excruciatingly painful. As he struggles to comprehend where he is, various thoughts flash through his mind. He wonders if he's in the Exhibition Center Hotel in Birmingham, where his company has a sales stand, or if he's back home. What is happening to me? It's pitch black, and I can't see a thing. I have a severe headache, a sore stomach, and a sore throat, along with a bandage on my head. Various thoughts race through my confused mind. Did my colleagues set me up with someone? I remember having great sales results yesterday, but my legs don't seem to move much. They feel restrained, much like my arms. I realize that the darkness isn't due to a cloudy night, but because something soft is tied over my eyes. I've never found myself in a situation like this before. Allison is going to be furious when she finds out. I open my dry lips and manage a soft groan. Suddenly, I feel warm lips press against mine. What the? I'm taken aback by the sensation. It's an unexpected kiss, and I'm momentarily paralyzed, unsure how to respond. Despite the cool air around me, I feel my face heat up and break into a sweat, which cools as it meets the air. I recognize the familiar scent of my wife's favorite perfume, and memories flood back. Gentle kisses from Allison before the kids came along. Those small moments of romance that have faded from our busy lives. Thank goodness it's not a stranger, and I know I can trust Allison. Though she's never tied me up before, I realize I would gladly do the same for her if she asked. Perhaps I'll suggest that after this surprising encounter, I sense my tension easing as I return her kisses with growing enthusiasm. I can't help but think that she must have followed me to Birmingham to celebrate my birthday. What a wonderful surprise. I love that woman. Ollie, I managed to ask hoarsely. I'm here, she replies softly. As she kisses me, I feel the cool breeze from the air conditioning against my flushed skin. She begins to sing softly, a familiar tune that makes my heart swell. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Bill. Suddenly, memories rush back. Leaving our room, drinking whiskey, and the realization that Allison is here with me, trying to seduce me. I think of her French lover and wonder how she got in my room. Where is he? I whisper, my mind racing with thoughts of jealousy and confusion. Don't worry about him, sweetheart, she says. Can you stop calling me that? And please, let's talk about something else. I attempt to shift my thoughts away from the situation at hand, but my mind feels blank. But the situation has taken on a life of its own, and I find myself with questions for you, Allison. I'm desperate to break this cycle of torment. I need to regain some semblance of control over what's happening, at least over my physical reactions. I'm painfully aware that I'm completely at their mercy, feeling stuffed like a Christmas goose. Go ahead, Bill, ask away. So, who was this guy you were involved with? What was going on between you two? Where did you meet? How long has this been happening? Is he still here in my room with us? The cookery teacher at the community college, she answers, responding to my first question. It's been nearly 6 months. Why did it start? I press. I really don't know. Since turning 50, I began to feel unattractive, especially since your desire for me has faded. Marcel gave me attention, and I found it flattering when he expressed his interest. But where is he now? He's in a nice hospital. You knocked out a few of his teeth when you punched him, and he's recovering from an emergency operation to reattach his tongue. Oh, and he swallowed a couple of teeth involuntarily. At this, she begins to giggle, breaking the tension for a moment. What did I do to make you give up on us, Allison? My serious tone pulls her back to reality. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Really, you stopped paying attention to me. I didn't think you would ever find out. So, are you leaving me for this man? No, honey. I would never leave you. I love you, not him. I never loved him. It was already over before it began. This week away was meant to be a final fling. It's only you that I want. What were you seeking with him? Was it just the thrill of being with someone else? No, it was never just about that. It was exciting because it was secretive. I wanted those memories to hold on to once I felt less desirable. You've always been desirable to me, I insist. I know, and I believe you. But you should have communicated more. I felt like I was becoming secondary in your life. Well, you've certainly achieved that, I retort, feeling the weight of betrayal. Don't say that. I never wanted to break us apart. I can't think of us as anything but a couple. I want us to overcome this. You call this deceit a little bump in our relationship? This is an unassailable mountain between us, and we're not equipped to cross it. And why am I still in the dark? What have you tied me up with? With your neckties, she replies lightly. There were 5 hanging in your wardrobe. So, what now? Are you going to release me? Not yet, she says softly, teasing me despite the gravity of the situation. Can you at least take off the blindfold? I want to see your face. I feel my anger boiling as she hesitates, weighing her options. Knowing that if I can't see her, I can't recognize the guilt etched across her face. I squint against the bright sunlight flooding into the double-aspect room. It's so intense that I struggle to keep my eyes open. Can't you pull those blinds? I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, Allison replies, her voice steady, revealing that familiar determination. I can only see her silhouette, haloed by the light flaring around her head. Well, we've only got until Friday. I want to keep you here and make the most of our time together. So it's all about you, isn't it, Bill? She snaps back, suddenly angry. What are you going to do for me? You're just lying there. You know this is assault, don't you? I say quietly, trying to calm us both with reason. We are still husband and wife, Bill. She sniffs. As my eyes adjust to the brightness, I see that tears have been streaming down her face, leaving dry tracks where they fell. Her eyes are red and swollen, and I can tell she hasn't slept much, maybe not at all. Not for much longer, I whisper, noticing the tears flowing more freely now. Oh God, what do we do now? Let's hear the story from Allison's perspective. I stare down at my husband, Bill, as he blinks desperately, trying to adjust to the bright light of early dawn. My tears continue to roll down my cheeks as the realization sinks in. There is absolutely no salvation for our ruined marriage. It's over now, just 3 months shy of celebrating 30 years since our wedding day on that hot July afternoon in 1984. I sniff and wipe the back of my hand across my cheeks, feeling the weight of my choices. What a mess. Caught cheating with a French cuisine teacher, who Bill hospitalized last night in a fit of rage. He put everything into one punch, leaving blood everywhere. Later, I found Bill unconscious in his luxurious suite after he had overdosed on aspirin and alcohol. I think I saved his life. I had tied him to the bedposts while he was still completely out of it. Now, despite being awake and fully aware of my actions, it strikes me that I am still, in a way, trying to seduce him in this king-sized bed. If this is the end for us, I feel compelled to show him what he might miss after I'm gone. Oh hell, Ollie, Bill gasps as I look down at him. My husband, at least for now. I know he started the divorce process yesterday, canceling my credit cards and emptying our joint bank account. Even before catching me in the act, he had realized I had become a footnote in his past and no longer figured significantly in his future. How did we get here? I had been in a panic just 6 or 7 hours ago, shortly after midnight, when I first let myself into Bill's beautiful suite at the Riviera Hotel. I found him half on and half off the bed, completely dead to the world. As I passed through the suite's lounge, I noticed an empty bottle of whiskey lying on its side and an empty packet of aspirin. I called for help from the hotel staff as soon as I saw his condition, fearing he had attempted suicide in response to my betrayal. A doctor, a nurse, a paramedic team, and the hotel manager kept me out of the bedroom while they pumped his stomach and inserted in 4 of some kind. The manager ushered me away into the suite's lounge and explained that they didn't want to involve the authorities. The doctor was confident that Bill's situation could be contained without further risk to his health. After half an hour of anxious waiting, the paramedics departed, and then the doctor emerged to explain that he had pumped the contents of Bill's stomach and given him something to help him relax. He showed me the sachet of pills and explained how most of the foil was missing from many of the cavities, with traces of pocket lint indicating that these pills had been taken over time, not just recently. He surmised that Bill had only recently taken between 2 and 6 tablets, although the large amount of alcohol he had consumed was concerning. The doctor thought that Bill hadn't eaten in the last 4 to 5 hours and would likely be ravenous shortly after waking. He explained that Bill would certainly be disoriented and confused upon waking and might not remember exactly where he was or what had happened to him. His head, throat, and stomach would be sore, but he shouldn't experience any long-term effects. After I had left the room, the nurse had bound his hand, and the doctor assured me that nothing appeared broken, just jarred and bruised. Then they left me alone with my thoughts. That's when I came up with the misguided idea of waking him up in a way that might evoke a more intimate connection. I seemed to have a recent history of poor choices, but I was overwhelmed by the reality of being caught cheating on the only man I ever loved. I realized I would never find another man I cared about as much. Okay, he had been ignoring me these last few months, but that wasn't the sole reason for my actions. I had acted out of immaturity, and I understood that I was responsible for the mess we were in. The bedroom had been left in darkness for Bill to sleep. Earlier, I had seen how the night manager drew the bedroom blinds using a remote control device. I found it on the table and experimented with it. It operated the lights, air conditioning, background music, and even opened a hidden panel with a large TV screen behind it, along with the curtains and blinds. I looked out the window at the sparkling lights of the nice seafront. Bill had a superb double-fronted view of the sea and beach. My old room, which I had shared for 3 nights with that forgettable suitor Marcel, overlooked only brick walls and part of the parking lot. I explored the suite, 2 beautiful bedrooms, each with exquisite bathrooms, a lounge with a bar, and a sleek kitchen. How had Bill afforded to rent something like this? Even if he had only just arrived, it must have cost a fortune. Marcel had paid for our room at the hotel, while I had covered the flight and we had insisted on splitting meals. I had drained the funds from an old account in my maiden name, money I had saved for Christmas and birthday gifts. By the beginning of the week, that account was exhausted. Bill should have been in Birmingham all week, yet here he was. Had he been following me since Sunday or Monday, watching me and Marcel act as if we were carefree lovers without a thought for our crumbling marriage? It must have broken Bill's heart to see us together like that, and I hadn't even noticed him around. I thought I had gotten away with my affair. What a foolish assumption that was. Seeing him burst in on us like that, discovering irrefutable evidence of my infidelity amidst all my recent lies, was a moment I could never have prepared for. Of course, he had orchestrated the delivery of champagne, allowing him to walk in on us unannounced. I must have inadvertently adjusted the temperature in the bedroom with the remote, as I suddenly felt a chill. Perhaps it was just the realization that I was standing in the ruins of my once loving relationship. Bill lay on his side, covered by a thin sheet, left by the medical team. I had lost track of time. My phone had been switched off since I went to the hospital with Marcel. After rebooting it, I found dozens of increasingly frantic voicemails from Kelly and Juliet, wanting to know what was going on. I sent them messages saying we were away in the south of France, working things out, just more lies to those I loved. By then, it was past 2 a.m., and I felt utterly exhausted. I stripped off and climbed into the big bed with him, cuddling up close and wrapping my arm around him, kissing him gently. He was warm, but he didn't stir. My body curled against him, and soon I fell asleep, though fitfully rather than peacefully. I think I cried myself to sleep, realizing everything I was about to lose. I woke as dawn light streamed through the beautiful picture windows. With my back to Bill, I realized that during the night, he had turned onto his back, snoring gently. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of him. For a brief moment, I forgot the gravity of my situation, but then memories flooded back. Visions of Marcel from the previous morning, Bill's discovery of us, the hospital visit, and calling the doctor after finding Bill so distressed. What a mess I had created. I thought about giving Bill a gentle kiss. That felt like a sweet way to wake him up, something I should have done all those years instead of being so selfish. In my desperation, I wondered if I could still create a beautiful moment with him. It might be my last chance to do something special with my husband. It was light enough to see without turning on the lights, so I gently got up without disturbing him. I quietly slid open his wardrobe. It was a bit chilly in the room, so I put on Bill's dressing gown first. I knew exactly what I was looking for. His silk ties hanging on a hanger. He had 5, one for each day of his week away at the exhibition. He was always smartly dressed for work. Bill was sleeping soundly, almost in the center of the bed. I carefully used his soft silk ties to gently tie his wrists to the brass bedposts, making sure not to cut off his circulation. He didn't move or react at all. He was so deeply asleep. The doctor had given him something to help him relax. I tied the last tie, a wider kipper style, around his head to cover his eyes. I then tucked him back under the sheet to keep him warm, even though the sun streaming through the windows already filled the room with a summery warmth. I ordered breakfast to be delivered to our suite over the phone, checking on the price first. The girl on the other end knew exactly which suite we were in and said breakfast was included in the booking. When I asked how much was included, she cheerfully informed me that everything on the menu was covered, so I ordered accordingly. While I waited, I pulled the sheet off him and examined Bill closely for the first time in a long while. He was no longer quite the attractive man I married. I had to admit that while I had kept fit and trim, Bill had let himself go, succumbing to middle age spread with a rounded stomach and love handles. His hair was thinning on top and turning gray. How could Sheila have convinced me that he would be chatting up women and flirting on his trips? Nevertheless, he was still my husband, and a profound sadness washed over me, almost bringing me to my knees. I had loved him for most of my adult life, and I still loved him deeply. The thought of losing our relationship had struck me sharply, forcing me to confront the depth of my feelings for this man, the father of my children. A discreet knock announced the arrival of breakfast at the door. It was rolled in on a heated trolley, allowing the hot breakfast to stay warm while the cooler items, juices, cream, milk, were transferred to the refrigerator. A carafe of rich French roast coffee accompanied the meal. I tipped the waiter with some cash I took from Bill's wallet, and then leaned down to kiss him, reminiscing about our earlier days together. As Bill began to cough, I moved in closer, kissing him softly while he slowly cleared the cobwebs from his mind, coming to terms with my presence. "We're both to blame here," I said, trying to remain calm. "Yes, it might have been different, but now it's over." "I can't forget what you did," he replied, a note of bitterness creeping into his voice. "I know, Bill. It was all my fault. I should have communicated with you about what I wanted, what I needed from you, instead of looking for it outside our marriage." "I never wanted that," he said firmly. "I always knew, even when Sheila planted seeds of doubt in your mind." "Bill, she didn't really," I insisted, tears welling up in my eyes. I cried into his chest, my shoulders heaving. "I can't express how much I regret what I've done to hurt you, especially on your birthday." He could feel the depth of my pain mirrored in his own. Tears brimmed in his eyes as well. "What am I expected to do now?" he asked, sounding defeated. "Look, it's Wednesday morning. We have today and tomorrow before we fly back to whatever awaits us. Can we not just stay in bed and enjoy some time together? Can we put off the heavy conversations until we leave here on Friday? So you think you can just pretend everything is fine until I forget all about this situation?" His voice rose, clearly frustrated. "No, nothing like that. I just want us to be together, to enjoy each other's company. I know our relationship has changed. We've become estranged because of my mistakes, and I accept that." "It doesn't sound like you do," he replied, skepticism in his tone. "I would love for us to find our way back to each other, but I know that trust has been shattered. I will always love you, Ollie. You'll always have a place in my heart, but I can never fully trust you again. I promise I will divorce you. You can count on that." I felt the weight of his words. "But think about it. You've already paid for this beautiful place. Instead of searching for something outside, why not make the most of our time here together? Even so, it's not that simple. I've seen you with another man, and I can't look past that right now." I gently released the tie holding his bandaged hand, kissing him one last time. She breathed in the familiar scent of his deodorant mixed with the aroma of his sweat. As she thought about packing their cases on Friday, she resolved to wrap his shirts in plastic to keep them as a reminder of what she knew she had now lost. She sat him at the table, pouring him some fruit juice and serving a dish of segmented grapefruit from the fridge, followed by a steaming cup of rich dark roast French coffee. "I see you're still wearing your engagement and wedding rings," he observed. "Yes, hon. I can't bear to lose them, Bill. You won't insist that I return them to you, will you?" "They're no good to me, Ollie. What do you want to keep them for anyway?" "They still mean something to me despite everything that's happened. Whatever happens to us, I promise I will wear both rings for the rest of my life," she replied earnestly. Bill fell silent, keeping his thoughts to himself. Allison glanced at him, noting the tension in the air. "I took off your grandmother's lovely eternity ring before I went to sleep last night. I left it on your bedside table. The ring box is at home, but I'll look for it when we get back." "There's no need for that, Ollie. Gran specifically left it to you in her will. She meant so much to you. I know you stayed with her a lot when you were a boy. I didn't even think she liked me enough to leave it to me," he said, reflecting on the past. "I think it's a quality diamond solitaire. Maybe it will come in handy as an engagement ring if you ever consider getting remarried." "I won't need the ring. Once bitten, twice shy," she said quietly, chewing on a piece of bacon that suddenly felt tasteless. She got up and fetched the warm croissants and pain au chocolate piled on a plate. "She really liked you, Ollie. She told me several times that you were good for me." He paused. "The ring is quite valuable, but there's a story attached to it. Back when I was about 15 or 16, my Aunt Pat asked me to come with her to pick up Gran and Grandad from one of the London rail stations. Paddington, I think. They had returned from a holiday in Venice, and I was supposed to help them with their bags." "I don't think you've ever mentioned it before," Allison replied. "And neither did your Gran. If it were me, I would never stop talking about such a trip." "No, I never spoke about it since it wasn't a positive memory. Aunt Pat was always chatty, and on the way, she told me that Gran and Grandad had traveled on the Orient Express, a romantic trip to Venice and back." "Oh, how lovely," Allison said, intrigued. "No, it wasn't really, hon. Aunt Pat confided that the trip was because Grandad had been caught having an affair with a secretary at work, and that expensive diamond eternity ring was part of the retribution. Gran wore it as a reminder, I guess. They stayed together, but they were never quite the same after that." "I didn't know your Gran wore that ring all the time as a reminder. Is that why you want me to keep it?" "No, that would be petty, Ollie. However, since most of the females in the family know the story behind it, it would be difficult to give it to anyone else. You could always pass it on to Kelly without the story attached. She really loved Gran." "That wouldn't be fair to the ring," Allison said thoughtfully. "What if she decides to marry one day?" "I'll leave it up to you what you want to do with it," Bill conceded. "You were taking me to my sister's on Thursday, as she's letting me stay with her until I find a place of my own. But I still want to see you regularly if possible." She took a deep breath. "Only until you meet someone you feel you could fall in love with." "Honey, I feel fat and ugly." "No, you're not. You know I can't accept that. You're a lovely, handsome man, okay? You could and should lose some of the weight you've put on recently, if only for your health." "Yeah, Keith was saying as much on the phone." "You called work while you were on holiday?" "No, Keith called me while you were in the shower." "Oh, so what did the old man want that couldn't wait until you got back?" "To tell me he was being promoted. Old Saunders is stepping down with immediate effect." "Oh, honey, Keith was your biggest ally there in your department. What's going to happen to you now?" "Not much, except starting next Monday, I'll cover for him as sales director while his PA, Pam, helps me get settled for a fortnight before she joins him." "So how long are you covering for Keith? Do they have someone in mind yet?" "Yes, they have me." The directors whined to the directors of Caledonian last night, who told them the only reason they didn't go shopping abroad for their massive refit was my integrity in ensuring they chose the most appropriate machinery. They originally planned to refit a year ago, but I told them at the time that if they couldn't wait, they should go for the Japanese competitor. However, if they could possibly delay, they should stall until our next generation of machinery, the Zero range, with the new microprocessors was ready. As you know, Caledonian decided to wait. Keith stood up for me and my methods of investing trust between us and the clients for years. Saunders saw the writing on the wall and jumped before the other directors pushed. "Oh, sweetheart, that's fantastic." Allison gushed as they descended. "Now we really need to get you back in trim. Look, we can run together and share a shower afterward. You'll be even more handsome and desirable than you ever were, and we can start that in the gym here at the hotel. You're going to be an even better catch. I know that Glinda and Izzy at the office fancy you already. I've seen them eyeing you up at office gatherings. But Izzy's 20 years younger than me with 2 school-age children, and she's never given me a hint. You may not have seen the hints, Han, but she wants you. I know she'll be with you as soon as she hears you've moved on," she said, with a hint of bitterness. "And your promotion is just adding icing on the cake. But until then, as I said earlier, I want to date you, Bill. I'll cook and clean for you on the weekends. I'd be ready to talk to you anytime. Allison, you've lost everything. I might forgive you for the sake of our marriage and children, but we can't live together. I have always loved you and will continue to do so until the last day of my life." They exited the lift and walked down the steps to the pavement. Marcel had a taxi waiting out front of the hotel to take him to the airport. He stood watching while the driver packed his bags in the boot. As he turned, hearing the sound of their voices, he recognized them. "Oh, the Alathon," he stuttered through his toothless grin. "Our flights go this afternoon." "Bonjour, Marcel," Allison said brightly, flashing her best smile. "Have you heard from your wife yet?" "Yes, I have. We are getting a divorce. Maybe we could." "No way. I'm afraid I'm staying here with my fantastic, forgiving husband. But anyway, have a good life, chef." They walked away, Allison holding tightly to Bill's arm, both remaining silent until they turned the corner. She exhaled loudly. "Thank you, Bill," she said quietly. "What for?" "For not rubbing my nose in it when you could so easily have done right in front of Marcel. I wouldn't talk to him again." "Nor me," she sobbed. "I've screwed up so many lives." "No, Marcel messed up his life without any help from you. He didn't think his marriage was worth the paper the license was printed on. He is to blame for the effects on his wife and children. Just think of your life as a new beginning." "Yes, you're so right, sweetheart." She smiled broadly. "When I get myself together, I think I'm going to be so persistent you'll either have to take out a restraining order to keep me away or take me in out of pity." Until she found employment, she wouldn't pursue any legal action. Allison disclosed every detail about her one and only affair the first night they got back from Nice. It was so late, and she was so upset that by the time she finished, she ended up sleeping in her daughter's bedroom. The next day, she moved out to her sister's house. Bill had helped Allison find a job, and they remained great and affectionate friends, comfortably attending family functions together with their children and grandchildren. Accepting their divorce status, they attended functions, plays, meals, and even day trips and vacations together with family, but they never slept together again after returning from Nice. About 3 years after the split, Bill fell in love with an attractive Scottish widow, Marguerite, who had a teenage son, Angus. Bill and Marguerite were soon married, and Bill's house was sold, with the proceeds split between the divorced couple. Bill and Marguerite bought a family-sized home in the same town. Allison used her share of the sale to move from her rented apartment into a small bungalow nearby. Allison and Marguerite became fast friends both before and after the marriage. When Allison finally gave up her slim hopes of marital reconciliation, she found comfort in Bill's old shirts, which had become familiar reminders of the past. After retiring, Allison struck up a relationship with the retired widower Alec, who kept himself fit by working part-time maintaining gardens that had become too much for their owners. Alec eventually moved in with Allison, and they became a faithful couple, but she refused to marry him, choosing instead to keep wearing the 3 rings from her first marriage as she had promised. Allison developed a successful second career writing a series of sentimental Christian romance novels and attracted a dedicated fan base. Marcel, on the other hand, lost his marriage and his job. He fared poorly in the divorce settlement due to a watertight prenup agreement. His ex-wife's famous divorce lawyer, Kitty Schilling, even sent her friends over on the day of the decree absolute, forcing him to pack a suitcase with everything in his wardrobe, including his carpet slippers. He had received a warning by phone beforehand, so he donned 3 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of pants, various t-shirts, and a couple of coats. His ex-wife's friends laughed, calling him the Michelin Man, and took photos of him to share on social media. At the next family function, Kitty took great delight in burning every single item, suitcase included, in a fire pit while he looked on. Despite hours of grueling speech therapy, Marcel struggled to find another teaching job. He appeared to be no longer attractive to even the loneliest of potential companions and endured a solitary existence. He was only able to scratch out a living processing technical translations for product instruction leaflets, working from his rented studio flat above a rundown row of mostly boarded-up shops. Forced by meager funds to rely on public transport, Marcel's attendance at family functions was infrequent. On more than one occasion, Marcel overheard his giggling grandchildren refer to him rather irreverently as Grandpa. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share,